Good morning, everybody. It's Emily here from the Willow Pod. And today we have with us Deborah Lush, and we're joined by interpreter Jill. So, first of all, Deborah, I'd like to ask you, how long have you worked in domestic abuse services, and how did you get involved in this line of work?
Well, I've been working for Definitely Women for 16 months, and my passion really is to work with people who suffer with domestic abuse. And the reason for that is that I myself experienced domestic abuse in the past. I mean, it was quite some time ago, but back then, at that time, I didn't realise that was what was happening. I didn't realise that I was a victim. And so now that I obviously understand what happened, and I see that lots of other women who are deaf and hard of hearing going through similar situations, and perhaps they don't realise, they're unaware that they are a victim of domestic abuse. So that's the reason that I wanted to get involved, because there are lots of barriers for deaf and hard of hearing people who can't access the ordinary mainstream services, and so there are definitely more barriers than for people who are not deaf. And really, it's the communication that is the issue there with the services. So I also became interested in working in domestic abuse because I'd worked as a volunteer within the police force.
Oh, wow!
Constabulary. So I was there for 7 years. And I worked alongside a lady there who was called Jane Birkin, and she previously was the PLOD manager, so that's the police link officers for deaf people. She's now retired.
Right.
We worked together, we did quite a lot of work with the deaf community, did some advocacy work and making sure that people had access to police services. And so from that, I thought, I really want to be able to help women who are deaf, hard of hearing, who are in domestic abuse situations. And so, so when I saw this role, it just really was, suitable for me.
Absolutely. As some people who listen to the podcast know, I myself was a victim, like you, Deborah, quite a long time ago, and also didn't realise that it was abuse. Yeah. So what does your day look like in your role?
Oh, gosh, lots of emails. Lots of emails, yeah. And so, I visit clients, I go and see them face to face. And now more so because obviously during COVID and with lockdown, I was unable to go and see people. So that made it really difficult. So we were doing things on Zoom like we are now, or we were also on WhatsApp, having video chats on WhatsApp. Obviously now we're starting to go back to do the face-to-face work with clients again. So I'll be at places like the Refuge Centre, for example. And so it's just offering support, really, providing advice and guidance for people, making sure that they have access to different services, that they have interpreters there available, things like that. And so lots of meetings as well in my day-to-day work. And so, liaising with various organisations. Also, I signpost people to different services that they may need. So it could be advocacy, it could be advice, it could be to the Citizens Advice Bureau, solicitors. Obviously, it depends on whereabouts in Derbyshire they live as well. Yeah. So I do lots of research. So I spend quite a lot of time on the internet and looking at the government website and guiding people to different information services as well. Yeah, it's one of those things I have to do. It's quite a big piece of the work. And at the moment, I'm doing the IDVA course, the Independent Domestic Violence Advisor course, and that's really added to my workload.
Oh, crikey. Yes, rather you than me.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's hard work.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what else does Definitely Women do? Is it just for victims of domestic abuse?
No, it's not. No, we have a range of services. And so we have 8 different members of the team working here at Definitely Women. Each of us has a different role. So what we offer as an organisation is lots of workshops for people. We also, provide like a creative space for people. So they might be able to attend like craft sessions. It might be that they're going for some advice regarding benefits. They might come to us to talk about how to write a will. We offer, information about how to budget and deal with finances. And also, obviously, within my project, I offer a lot of workshops for deaf and hard of hearing women as well, linked to domestic abuse. So things like how to keep safe online, for example, if people are doing online dating, that's something that I talk about. How to keep safe when you go on a date and you meet new people. How to spot warning signs as well. What are some of the warning signs within a relationship that people may not be aware of? And so our organisation, really, the aim is to empower deaf and hard of hearing women and deafblind women to become more confident, learn new skills, make new friends. We find that lots of people can be quite isolated, particularly if they're in a more rural area. If they're in rural Derbyshire, it can be quite isolating. So that's the aim of our organisation. In addition, we have one member of staff who offers sexual health and reproduction information and guidance. So sort of an educational role, really, provide information and support.
I think we need to team up a bit more around the rural areas.
Yes, I think so, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, that would be lovely. I'll send you another email afterwards, after the podcast.
Thank you.
So if you had a magic wand and you could make any changes to the world of domestic abuse, what would you do?
Well, I do feel very strongly that education needs to start in school. I think to start that at an early age. There seems to be, a lot of domestic abuse going on. It could be in the family home. People might witness it, experience it, and so to teach people, not just girls, but teach the boys as well, about what domestic abuse means, about what's a healthy relationship and what is not acceptable.
Yeah.
That women also have rights and they should be treated on an even keel. There seems to be quite a lot of things on TikTok.
Yeah.
I see a lot of girls, they're looking at videos on TikTok thinking, or that this is okay, and perhaps that they're sort of, giving themselves away to these boys, and you're thinking, some of this actually is not okay.
No.
It's not right. And I think that there's a real gap at the moment. It's a big gap in that kind of education, and that's something that I feel really passionate about, is that to get that education in early.
Absolutely. And then I just wanted to ask you, Deborah, how is it different for a woman who is deaf or who has hearing loss, who's being abused? What are the different challenges that she might face? Well,
first of all, if a deaf person's a British Sign Language user, then for them to access English, it might not be that easy if it's their second language. So they may struggle with English. I'm not saying that all deaf women that use sign language can't also access English, but for some women it's a second language and they'll struggle with it. And so that can make them really struggle to connect to services or to different organisations, because they're afraid they don't really understand how to express themselves and what the services do. And also, maybe, for example, there are some services that you can text, but when they text back, they might not understand what the text says. And so they then need to think about, right, I need to go and get another organisation, I get an interpreter to help me with this information. And so it's not immediate. And so to get interpreters, you need to book them in advance. And so it can make it more problematic. Sometimes a client doesn't want an interpreter to know, they want direct support. And so that's why often they'll just carry on and they won't say anything to anybody. They feel like they've got nobody to turn to. And then because the deaf community is also it's quite close knit, it's quite small, everybody knows each other.
Yeah.
That as well can be part of the reason that some people feel maybe a little bit of, might feel ashamed, they might feel embarrassed, they don't want people to know. So they worry about that. The main reason for deaf people facing barriers is down to communication.
Yeah.
And because a lot of different organisations, they don't really have text services. Generally, it'll say, oh, you can phone this number. So they're just immediately inaccessible. It's not straightforward for deaf, hard of hearing and deafblind women to access services. And also, if a deaf woman is with a hearing partner, so their partner's not deaf, they may be quite reliant on them to do everything. And so just, everyday daily tasks perhaps. So they might feel a little bit like, well, if I leave them, then I'm not going to be able to cope because they do this, this and this for me. And so that's another reason that they may not say anything and they may just sort of carry on, keep the status quo, and just put up with some of the things that they put up with.
Yes, like you say, if you have to book an interpreter, you can't just flee because you can't call your interpreter to help you out.
No, exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. It is. And not just deaf people either, and obviously I understand, with people with various disabilities, whether, somebody's a wheelchair user, for example,
of course,
it's not easy to flee. And if you have additional requirements, it's even harder. So
absolutely. And also it's interesting how you said with the deaf community being very everybody knows everybody, it's very similar to what we talk about in the Willow Project training.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the similarities between the similarities between the two communities. We definitely need to work together, Deborah.
Yeah, and also I think that the confidence issue is and trust is something quite a big thing, because the deaf community is small. People become easily suspicious. Am I going to keep quiet? They often they worry that I'm not going to be confidential, and so people can often be quite suspicious. And so that's a concern that information is going to go further than me. And obviously, it's not. I'm a professional, but it's trying to instill that confidence in people, and it takes trust it takes time to get that trust instilled.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely now people are starting to come forward, which is great to see. It's just taken a bit of time, so finally it's happening. It's just carrying on with the advertising what we do, getting the information out there so that people can see what we're doing and what we can do for them, and just keeping going with that, really. And also of course with COVID, it's been very, very difficult. Yeah, I mean, obviously now it does seem to be getting a little bit better, hopefully. So,
fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed indeed.
Well, it's been lovely speaking to you, Deborah, and thank you, Jill, for coming along too. I'm going to put all your contact details in the bottom of our podcast information. And also, brilliant. I'm really impressed, listeners. I found a website which can transcribe everything we've said, so it will be available for people to read as well if they want to.
Yeah, brilliant. That's great. Thank you very much.
Lovely.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. We do actually have another website, and it's called Spring Derbyshire.
Right.
And on there are lots and lots of links and lots of information regarding domestic abuse. It's all signed, so there's all information in sign language on there, and explanations of what words mean, so a little bit of a glossary for people, because as I said, if deaf people struggle with English, then there's some terminology in there for people to get to grips with what things mean. It's available.
I'll put that in the description as well. That's lovely.
Brilliant, thank you.
So I just want to say thank you again for coming along, and it's been lovely speaking to you, and hopefully I will speak to you again in the near future and do another podcast with you.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love that. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.